You're listening to Perfectly Normal. This is a podcast where I bring you love, courage, and connection. I'm your host, Michelle Quay. I'm a confidence and leadership coach where I work with negative self-talkers to get them to believe in the talent that they have in reaching their full potential in both personal and professional life. I'm the founder of Elevate Life Coaching. It's a coaching and seminar company. Welcome to the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Another week, another paradise. So this week, all the gyms and a lot of restaurants are actually opening. And so over the weekend, my family came over, my brothers and nieces and nephew, they all came over to visit. And it was fun. There was a lot of people in the house. So it brings me to the topic of today's topic. So those of you who's been listening to my podcast, you probably have noticed the way that I opened, it was by singing love, courage, and connections. But have you ever wondered, like, how did I ever come up with those three things, So, and, to be honest, they're not my top values. I believe they are what helped me to go through my year and also my experience. It's through love, courage, and connections that I am able to navigate through life, no matter whether it's challenge or obstacles or difficulty, anything that comes in my way. These are the three things or my toolboxes. I would consider them as my tools in my toolbox to help me to navigate through life. So why did I pick them? Right? Of all the things, of all the tools, why did I pick love? Why did I pick courage? And why did I pick connection? So here is how they are interrelated to each other and why they are all connected. So there's a phrase that goes, you can't receive what you cannot give. You cannot receive what you cannot give. So let's take a moment and think about what is it that we can give. I think for a long time, I was contemplating and I was thinking, I was dwelling on looking for the answer to why. Why do I exist? Why am I here? That looking for a meaningful purpose to the life that I have. And I came to realization that the why has everything to do with who we are, how we are, and how do we show up. And it has to do with the level of consciousness, which last week I had talked about the being the multidimensional being, and that involved raising your awareness, raising your level of consciousness. So once I started to realize that we are more than who we think we are, then it led me to wanted to discover who is it that I am? Like, who is that who? Who is me behind the great schemes of all things, right? So I went on a journey in searching it. And I realized that you cannot receive what you cannot give. So what can you give to the world? And I asked that question to myself, what is it that I can do to this world and how can I contribute to this world? And I realized that through my whole entire life, and I was loved. I was loved by many, family love, friendship, all these people who come into my life. I was loved. Whether or not, I was able to recognize that at the moment, that was something that I had to learn. But in that moment of time, every moment I was loved and people loved me. And when I say that, it's not in a very egotistic way. It's more of a, it's a revelation, something that was revealed to me that I didn't realize how much love I have all around me. So going back to that phrase, you cannot receive what you cannot give. So the fact that we are feeling that love, we feel loved, is because you are love. You, at this very moment, this very single second that you're listening to this podcast, you are love because you cannot receive what you cannot give. So in order to receive love, it means that you are love. You're giving love in order for it to attract to you. And it may not be the form, it may not be the way that you would expect it. It may not come out to be a romantic love that you were expecting, but you were loved. The moment that you sit down, or even when you are in the process of dating or looking for a relationship, the moment that you two strangers sit down together on the same table, or the fact that you are texting the other person or communicating with that person, that in itself is a form of love. It may not be the same definition of romantic love, but it is a form of love. So, love, right? And then the second one is the courage. Once you feel that you are loved and that you've been loved, what is your next step? Why do we need that love in the first place? What can love do for us? And I think on my journey, I realized that the reason why I have so much love and I'm being loved is because love will gives me the strength. It would provide me the courage to go on to make and discover who I am and what I can do to contribute to the world. So having that courage enable me to become vulnerable, to having the courage to share all these deep emotion and thoughts and experience with you takes courage. And for those of you who's been wanted to be more courageous, wanted to be inspired by someone who can do a lot of fearless things, well, here's what I want to share with you. Just imagine that you have a mirror right in front of you this very moment, and what you see is a reflection of who you are. So the fact that you are seeing the courage in another person, that courage is actually mirroring back to you, and that has everything to do with you. You are the courage. You are a courageous person. And no matter what kind of journey that had brought you here, that had led you here, you are courageous. If you are not courageous, you wouldn't be sitting here and listening to my podcast. If you are not courageous, there are days that we wake up and that we feel like shit and we don't feel like doing anything. So the fact that you got up, you turn on the podcast, you turn on the radio, you went to my website, you took a look on my book, or it inspired you to wanted to learn more, that inspiration is what sparks that fire. Even though you may not see it burning like a bonfire, but it's in there. It's like that little flickering light that you see on the candle. And that's good enough. That little tiny light is good enough because that's the beginning of your journey. That is the beginning of your courage. That is the beginning of you being fearless to go out there and try something new. So sometimes we really neglect that little or the small wins in our life. So I was reading a book the other day, and it was about the resilient. And the book that I was reading, it was from Rick Hanson, and it's about resilient. And there's a chapter in there that talk about everyday success. And in that chapter, he basically talked about we have to start to recognize that, going through our day, there's a lot of small wins. There's a lot of small everyday success that we need to begin to accept, appreciate, and actually embrace them. So this is what the chapter, I'll just read to you a little bit. It says, be mindful of succeeding as a small outcome, such as preparing a meal, adding paper to a printer, or reading to a child. Producing even a single small result, let's say eating a spoonful of soup, usually involve many smaller accomplishments, such as holding the spoon, dipping into the bowl, bringing it to the lips without spilling, getting the soup into the mouth, and then return the spoon to the table. Any one of these little accomplishments is a chance to feel successful. So I think it's so true that a lot of time we just forget that every moment we're doing something amazing, and even as small as insignificant as it seems, it's still a small accomplishment. So what have you accomplished today? That would be a question I want you to ask yourself today. Like, what have you accomplished today? It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be major. Maybe as much as replying to an email, which I did today. I sent out a couple of outreach email to clients so I can, check in with them. So that was my everyday success. It was my big accomplishment because otherwise I would be writing it in my journal and it was just waiting to be checked off. But today I checked it off. So that was a big accomplishment for me this morning. And now I'm recording a podcast, and that's a big accomplishment to me, by the fact that I'm sitting here and I have some time to talk about and sharing the reason why I have this love, courage, and connection with you. This is a big accomplishment. So we need to celebrate our little accomplishment because it doesn't require anything big or large to be courageous. So that is the reason for the courage. So the next section is the connection. So what is the connection? Connection to what? And you might be wondering, well, there's a lot of connection that we are making every day. So if you think about it, all relationships are connections. Whether it's your romantic relationship, your relationship to work, relationship to your family, relationship to your kids, any type of relationship is really built by having the connection. So, and there's a story that I heard a couple of years ago when I was at a conference, and there's a story about these aspen trees. I believe that was in Utah. And there's massive acres and acres of aspen tree. And when you look at aspen, it's each individual tree by itself, standing by itself on the ground. And when you look deeper into the roots of the aspen tree, what you see and what you can observe is actually the roots are all interconnected. So it's a massive plantation of aspen tree, all connected to each other. But on the outside, it looks very individualized. They're independent, not related to each other. They're standing by themselves. But underneath them, they're all connected. And that to me is just really a really profound idea. If we were to apply that analogy to human being, we are each individual souls, individual bodies. But if you think about, the way that we think, the way that we act, the way that we live our life, we are actually really, really interconnected to each other. It's without your any differentiation or separation between the race, gender, any social status, you name it. There's no separation. It's all interconnected with each other. Something that you do will influence how I am, and the energy that you carry, which I share multiple times, is that if you are being affected by energy, someone else can also be influenced by it. So we are all connected. Now, how do you build on that connection? It requires you to have love for yourself and love for others. It requires you to have the courage to do what? The courage to be vulnerable. And I think Brene Brown really said it the best. So vulnerability is actually, in order to have vulnerability and authenticity, courage plays a really big piece, because you need to have courage in order to become vulnerable. And we are all afraid of being vulnerable. Being vulnerable means that you're standing on the stage and you're probably naked in front of everybody. And being vulnerable means that a lot of time, it doesn't feel comfortable sharing some of the ideas and putting yourself out there. That is vulnerability. Being able to express how you feel, who you are, to it may be a complete stranger. How do you create that trust? How do you build upon that trust and feel comfortable in sharing that? That in itself, the first step takes courage for you to actually be vulnerable. Then you build that connection. When you are becoming vulnerable, when you're courageous enough to become vulnerable, what you do is you trust the other person, and that is the beginning of a relationship. You have to create a trust, a bounding that between you and the other person in order to connect. And once you connect, whether you are doing a business, whether you are parents or kids, grandparents, no matter what position or what roles of life that you are currently in, that connection begins when you have that trust. And when that trust begins, you have a relationship. So this is the reason why I started this podcast, because I care for love, courage, and connection. Those are the three things and three tools that I believe is going to help us to navigate through life, whether it's a challenge that you have in your hand, whether it's an obstacle that you need to get through, whether it's some just inner emotional difficulty that you are experiencing. How do we honor ourselves with love? How do we honor ourselves to have more courage? And also, what is it that we can do to not only build a connection with others, but also building a connection within ourselves? Those are the three important tools that oftentimes I would take out from my own toolbox and say, you know what does this situation call for? Does it call for a connection? Does it call for more love? Does it call for more courage? What is in front of me, and how can I use these tools to help me to navigate forward? How do I move forward with these tools? So this is why I started this podcast. It's called Perfectly Normal. And this is where I bring you love, courage, and connection, because I believe that these are absolutely essential to move forward in life. And it's perfectly normal where you are, how you're feeling. It's perfectly understandable. And you are not alone because of this connection. So that is this week's podcast. And wherever you are, I wanted to wish you a lot of love, a lot of courage, and making a lot of connection, meaningful connection, not just to other people, but also within yourself. After all, our relationship is really coming from within. And when we can strengthen our relationship from within, then we can extend that relationship to others and building that trust and love and helping and inspire others to become more courageous. So that's this week, and I will see you next week. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening. In order for this conversation to continue, I would like to invite you to join my private Facebook group, The Confidence Lab for Remarkably Courageous People. This is where we can continue this conversation to bring more love, courage, and connection in helping each other and supporting each other in moving forward in our lives. If you found value in this show, I would appreciate if you can give me a rating on iTunes or Spotify, or simply share this show with a friend who may benefit from hearing it. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. If you'd like to learn more about what I do as a coach, please visit my website at elevatelifecoaching.org or shoot me an email. See you on the next show.